Today I'm going to show you guys how to have blazing fast internet while you're out on the trails, camping, overlanding, in spots like this. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. I've been using Starlink for mobile internet for a couple of months now, and I think I've gathered enough information on it from using it myself to give you guys my thoughts on it, and maybe this will be something that will help some of you guys out there. So right behind me here in this little convenient traveling case is everything that I need for high-speed internet while I'm traveling around, out in the mountains, out in the desert, far from civilization where your cell phone just doesn't work. So I'm coming at this video from a standpoint of having connectivity when you're out in the mountains, which is not for everyone. The reason I bought this is because I, of course, work remotely quite often. Everything that I do involves having internet connection, and I don't need it all the time. I still love going camping and completely unplugging for a while. However, my girlfriend Ashley also is starting to work remote, so I figured I might as well invest in a Starlink and see how this thing does as we're traveling around. So first, let's talk about the actual hardware, what I currently have, and also this case that I have it in. I opted to pick up the Starlink travel case because this is not something that I permanently have mounted to a vehicle. You can mount it to the top of a truck, a van. However, since I don't want to have duplicates of a Starlink because it's not the most inexpensive thing in the world, I opted to also pick up this case from Starlink, and I believe this case was around 250 bucks, which is quite a lot, but it is really nice build quality. It's got like backpack straps on here and some nice padding. I don't know why you would need to carry this thing around outside of a vehicle, but hey, the option is there. Now, I opted for the RV version of the Starlink. The very first ones that ever came out, they were really made to mount to like a cabin or a home out in the woods where you do not have good internet. This one allows you to bring it around with you, set it up, and have connectivity basically everywhere. So right on top here, we have the actual antenna dish. You do have a protective layer right here to keep this thing safe, so this is the main part of the unit here. And now underneath this protective layer, you find everything else. We have foam custom cut for this, so right here we have the actual base. Then we have two bags, one right here for the power going to the router. You have the long cable, which will go into the router and then out to your antenna. And then last but not least, we have the actual router itself right here. So the hardware cost on everything right here is $599, and you can find all of this information over on Starlink's website. The RV version is going to be best for a mobile unit that you move around between vehicles, something that you're not hard mounting to the top of a vehicle or a van. And since that's how I use it, this is the one that I opted for. Since I bought this, they actually released a new version, which is essentially a flat Starlink. And the reason for that is because people found that with this RV unit, there are actually motors inside of here which will allow it to position itself more precisely to the actual Starlink satellites. Once it is positioned, you're going to get the strongest signal possible. However, people started to use these while they were actually moving. So people would drill into somewhere around here and then get to a little plug on a circuit board. They would remove that plug, and then that would keep this thing fixed in the stow position, which you see it in right now. So they would basically mount this to the top of a van like this, pointed straight up at the sky, and you would be able to get internet while you are moving. So Starlink must have picked up on people doing that, and they released a flat model, which I haven't seen in person yet, but I'm assuming it's a little bit slimmer than this, and you can actually hard mount it to wherever you see fit. So for this video, we are specifically talking about the RV version, which is going to be best for mobile, and it is $599 for all of the hardware that you see here. After tax and whatever kind of fees that you have tacked onto this, I ended up paying $694, which in the grand scheme of things isn't really too bad. I think I've already got my money's worth out of this, and I've only used it for a few months. The other fee on top of this is going to be the actual subscription plan. So once you have the hardware, you can activate your subscription on a monthly basis, or turn it off if you're planning on not using it or you're not traveling for a while. And as of right now, the subscription service is $135 per month. You can set up auto payments, that way it just kind of comes out of your account or gets charged to a credit card, and you will always have connectivity with this thing. Since I travel quite a lot, I have not paused my subscription yet, but it is very easy to do with the included app. So now I guess we'll get this thing set up. Right here, we're going to start with the cable which connects the antenna to the router. You have a ton of length on this cable, that way you can get this thing set up in the best position possible, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I just wrapped some little Velcro reusable kind of like zip ties around this thing. I use them all the time, and that keeps everything nice and neat. Now we're going to look at the mounting part of the base here. This is where you're going to attach one of the cables. This essentially looks like a mini HDMI cable, and there's only one way you can install this. You will notice that there's a little bit of a groove here, and you want to make sure that connection is clean. This thing obviously sits outside quite a lot, and it just slides up into this little groove here, and it seats in place just like that. Now we will take the base, and you will notice that there's a little notch in here. You're going to line that up with the groove, and then this simply clicks into place just like that. Now, as far as setting this thing up, obviously it's working based off of the Starlink satellite, so you want to be in a very clear open area, if at all possible. I've used this thing in a few different applications, a lot of times where tree coverage was kind of an issue, sometimes mountains and big rocks were issues as well. I have never been in a situation where any obstructions has completely stopped the service of the Starlink. It has given me some form of internet no matter where I'm at, but where I'm at today is wide and open, and as long as internet usage based off of the Starlink in my area is not too high right now, there's a really good chance that we're gonna have some good reception with this thing. So I'm gonna go out into this field, set it up in a position where essentially it can position itself north and south, and then I will run this cable back into the camper that I'm sitting in, and then we're gonna connect it to the router. So as you can see, there's a whole lot of nothing out here. North is this direction right here, so I'm gonna place it just about like that. Since I do not have my motors disengaged here, you will see that when I turn this thing on, it will position itself upright until it finds satellites, and then it will point itself in the direction of the closest satellite. So now I will run this cable back to the camper. We'll get this plugged in. So back here at the router, there's not much to it, just two plugs on the bottom and a little light. We're going to take the cable that's going out to the antenna, and that plugs into the bottom just like that, the way the cable is routed out the back. Now I will take the power cable, which does have some nice weather seals on it. I have not left the router outside. I wouldn't recommend it, but it can probably handle it. And this goes right into the center. All that's left to do is plug this thing in. I'm gonna turn on the AC power, and we should have a light on the bottom now. Now in just a second, you will notice that this will position itself upwards. And let's check out a run time. So I'm gonna start a timer here and see how long this thing takes to actually boot up. There we go. So now this thing has positioned itself in a straight up position. It's oriented itself north and south as well. So let's open up the Starlink app. This app is available on all different platforms, and this is where I'm really going to control everything about the Starlink, and I'll be able to get some real-time readouts of the speed of it. So I'll need to go into my Wi-Fi settings, connect to the SatLink, and now we can see that it is currently offline and it is booting up. We are currently at 1 minute and 30 seconds. Now while we're waiting for this thing to boot up, I can actually show you guys some of the stuff in the settings here. So if I click on visibility, this is where you're going to be able to check for those obstructions that I talked about. So let me open up the camera, find an open area, and then I'm gonna scan the entire sky. Now I'm ready. Point the camera up. You're going to collect all of these little dots. And as you can tell, there were virtually no obstructions there. We're gonna view results, then it will estimate what your connection is going to be like. So there we have it. This is a great place for your Starlink. Now, if you do find any obstructions here, this is where you can have a chance to actually move the thing around a little bit. In an area like this, it's probably going to give me the best performance, but also peak hours will affect this thing. So if you're in an area where a ton of people are using Starlink and you're all connecting to the same satellite, then you can expect lower speeds, just like any kind of internet for that matter. So now it says that the SatLink is now online. You'll notice that it did not move and position itself yet. Sometimes that does take a little bit longer. We're currently at about 5 minutes. It was probably online a little bit before then. So let's jump back inside the camper where it's warm, and then we will check out our connection speeds, and maybe we will see if this thing orients itself to the closest satellites. Literally right as I was climbing inside of the camper, this thing did orient itself in the position closest to the nearest satellite. So we should be really good right here. Now, just like home internet or Wi-Fi, you are going to have a stronger connection and a faster connection when you are close to the router, so this is about the best case possible. Let's open up a speed test and see what we come down with. It's climbing 70, 60, 80, 90, 100, 101 megabits per second, and then upload, of course, is going to be quite a lot slower than that. We ended with 4.5 upload, 101 megabits down, and 49 latency. On the bottom here, I can click Run Advanced Speed Test, and this will show you the connection to the router, the actual speed of the whole unit. So we're going to start the advanced test. Starlink speed router to internet. Still up above 100 megabits per second. 123 down, and it's looking like about 8, 9, 13 upload. And now, of course, we're going on to the Wi-Fi speed, the iPhone to the router, and this is going to be crazy high numbers because I'm sitting right next to it. Chart is climbing, and we are at 555 down and about 462 up. So that's some pretty damn good internet speeds. A lot of time that's better than cable internet. This is like absolute best case scenario, and it just kind of goes to show you guys what the Starlink is actually capable of. Now, if we dive a little bit further into the settings, you can see other things here like the network. You can see what is actually connected to it. There are two things connected to it. I'm assuming that would be my phone and then my iPad, which is in my camera bag. Under the settings here, this is where you will configure the Wi-Fi, so you can change the name of it, change the password. On a morning like today, we got about 3 inches of snow last night, which has already kind of melted, but if you do have the antenna sitting outside, it has a snow melt feature. So in the off position, this thing is going to work like normal, but then in the automatic setting, it's going to detect when it's really cold and there is ice, frost, or snow buildup on the actual antenna. I have that set to automatic. I've really only seen that working one time, and it worked pretty damn well. And then you also have a preheat setting, which will keep the device warm all the time. That way snow does not accumulate on it, but that is when you're going to be using the most power. For reference, as of right now, I'm not really using a whole lot of internet, and we are only pulling about 24 to 30 watts out of the usage right now. If we scroll down a little bit further, we have some advanced settings, and you can also set up multiple Starlinks. Under the shop section, this is where you are going to see all of your subscriptions for however many Starlinks you have. This is where I got that Starlink travel case. You can get different mounts to mount this on a vehicle, on a house. You can get a 75-foot replacement cord. There's just a ton of options here, and you can basically tailor this kit to whatever needs you have. There's also a range function here, so if I click on that, you can actually move around your house and see how your connection is from your device to the router. I've never really had the need for that because I'm always in pretty close proximity to the router. And now we might as well just do a quick test. Obviously, with those internet speeds, if you are familiar with internet speeds, streaming on Netflix loads instantly. This thing is working just as expected, and in most cases it's better than your home internet, which is pretty rad. Now, I have not had the need to actually upload videos through this thing yet. However, in a pinch, I think it would definitely be adequate. It's not going to be as fast as my own personal home internet, which is like business class from Comcast. However, it will definitely get you by in a pinch, and it's going to work way better than just like one of those Wi-Fi jetpack type of things. So for a quick recap of the whole kit, we're looking at about $600 for the actual hardware itself, $135 a month. And that subscription plan you can change if you're not planning on using these devices at all. You can turn it off for a month and turn it back on whenever you're going out to travel. The RV version is great for applications like this when you're camping and overlanding, you're in remote areas and you want to have some type of connection. I haven't even hit on this yet, but having this set up, as long as you have power, is also kind of like a nice safety plan to have. Maybe you're out on a trail and you break down, you can set up the Starlink in about 5 minutes or maybe even less, and then have connection to call for help. That's not always going to be the case with cell phone reception and little Wi-Fi jetpacks. So while this thing is definitely a luxury, it's going to allow you to work basically wherever you are at. It also gives me a little bit of peace of mind that way in case I really need to get connected when I'm really far off the grid. I have this capability now, and so far I'm a fan. I'm actually using this quite a lot more than I ever thought I would. I really picked this up just for sort of like a test run trial. I wanted to see, 1, how good the speeds were, 2, how it works while you're traveling in different areas, up in the mountains, tree coverage, rock coverage, whatever it may be. And I'm using this thing quite a lot more than I ever thought I would. Now there's one more important thing to note before you wrap up this whole setup, which I will show you guys right out here at the antenna. Now, one of the most important things, which I forget to do quite often, is to put this thing back into stow mode before you pack it up and before you remove it from power, because that's how you're going to get this thing to fit back in its case. So if I hop into the settings, go to stow mode, it will tell you that the Starlink will not work when it's in stow mode. I'm going to click OK, and it positions itself back almost as straight as possible. That way you can pack this thing up and move to the next spot. So just about 5 minutes later and everything is packed up in this case and ready to go. A few things that I didn't mention. This case, definitely overkill. There are some good DIY solutions out there where you can like cut up the packaging that this Starlink came in and fit it into something like a Husky box from Home Depot. So if you don't want to spend a whole lot of money on a case, then there are other options out there to carry this stuff around. Also, this stuff is really rugged and weatherproof and water resistant, so it should last a really long time as long as you take care of it. It's completely fine leaving outside. I leave this thing outside all the time, and I've never had any issues with it in the past couple of months of me testing it. And there's a good chance that you guys are going to see me using this in a bunch of videos here in the future. So if you guys have any questions on it, let me know in the comments down below. I'll try to answer anything as best as possible. I will also bring you guys some future updates on me using the Starlink if I ever run into any hiccups, or maybe some like tips and tricks that I come across in the future. I'll let you guys know all that stuff when the time is right. So that is all that I had for today. If you guys are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe because I make new videos every week. As always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.